Have you ever given something small, a simple act of kindness, and had it change your life? Years later. Because once a homeless girl gave her last piece of bread to a wounded German shepherd. And years later, that same dog ran through fire to save her. This isn't just a story about survival. It's about loyalty that remembers, even when the world forgets. It's about how one moment of compassion can ripple through time and come back when you least expect it. I've spent years studying true stories like this. Stories of canine heroes, rescue dogs, and the unspoken bond between humans and animals. And every single one of them proves the same thing. Love given freely never disappears. It just finds a way home. So if you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt they understood you, this video will remind you why. Stay with me till the end. Because what happens between this girl and her German shepherd isn't just heartwarming. It's life-changing. By the time we're done, you'll see why kindness, even the smallest kind, might be the most powerful thing you ever give. The city had long forgotten the sound of kindness. It hummed instead with rain and engines and the tired sighs of people rushing to get somewhere warm. Neon lights bled across puddles, smearing color on cracked sidewalks, where no one looked down anymore. And there, in that forgotten place between light and shadow, a little girl walked barefoot through the cold. Her name was Lena, 10 years old, though the world had aged her twice that. She wore a torn coat that used to be pink, but was now the color of old rainwater. The sleeves were too long, the buttons mismatched. An old blanket, once white, now gray, hung from her shoulders like a cape that had lost its magic. The wind kept pulling at it, trying to steal away the last bit of warmth she owned. Her stomach growled softly, a desperate whisper under the noise of the storm. In her pocket, she carried her treasure, a half loaf of bread, wrapped carefully in a piece of paper she'd found in a trash bin. She had promised herself she would eat it tomorrow, when the hunger got worse. That's what she did every night. Promise herself tomorrow. A bus passed by, splashing dirty water across her legs. She didn't flinch. She had stopped caring about the cold long ago. Her eyes, large, quiet, too serious for a child, wandered toward the glowing windows of a bakery. Behind the glass, she saw families eating, children laughing, hands holding mugs of hot cocoa. She pressed her palm against the window. For a moment, her reflection blurred into theirs, and she imagined she was one of them. Then someone inside noticed her, frowned, and pulled the curtain closed. The laughter dimmed. The world shrank again. She turned away. Down the Palazzo alley. A flickering streetlight buzzed overhead. The ground was littered with paper cups, cigarette ends, and dreams people had thrown away. Lena walked carefully between puddles, humming a lullaby she barely remembered. Her mother used to sing it when the night grew too loud. That was before the fire. The memory came uninvited, like smoke sneaking under a door, flames licking at the curtains. Her mother's scream, her father's arm lifting her up, running through the heat. Then, darkness. Sirens. The smell of burnt wood. She never saw them again. They said she was lucky to survive. But luck felt like a cruel word when you had nowhere to go. She'd been through 3 foster homes after that, each one colder than the last. Some people wanted her to work. Some wanted her gone. Eventually, she ran, and the streets, cruel as they were, didn't ask questions. Here she'd learned how to hide, how to find food others didn't want, how to sleep sitting up so no one would take her things. But the hardest lesson was silence. Because the world only heard people who had something to give. Still, she talked to herself sometimes, softly, like a secret. "It's just one more night, Lena," she whispered. "Just one more, then maybe tomorrow will be better." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the loneliness of saying a lie you wish could be true. A cat darted out from under a dumpster, meowing softly. Lena crouched and held out her hand. The cat sniffed, then rubbed against her fingers. Its fur was wet and matted, but warm. She smiled faintly. "Hey, little one, you cold too?" she murmured. "It's okay. I get it." The cat purred once and disappeared again. Just a brief visitor, like everyone else. Lena stood and pulled the blanket tighter. The rain fell harder now, sharp and relentless. She found shelter under a narrow metal awning, sitting with her knees drawn to her chest. The city lights shimmered in her eyes like distant constellations. From somewhere far away, she heard music, a street performer still playing under the rain. A harmonica, maybe. The sound drifted through the night, soft and broken, and for a moment, it felt like hope had a voice again. She took out the bread. The smell was faint, a day old, but it was still food. She broke a corner off and chewed slowly, letting each bite last. Hunger had taught her patience. She stopped halfway and looked at what remained. She couldn't eat it all. Tomorrow, she told herself again. Tomorrow, she might need it more. The wind howled between buildings like a ghost. Lena watched her breath fog the air. Her eyes grew heavy, but she didn't dare sleep. Bad things happened when you slept too deep in alleys. She remembered the stories other street kids told, the ones who never woke up. Instead, she imagined. She imagined a bed with soft sheets, a fireplace, where her mother hummed while brushing her hair. A big dog lying beside her feet, keeping her warm. She smiled at the thought, unaware of how close that last image would come true. A car door slammed in the distance, followed by shouting. Then silence again, broken only by the rain. Lena hugged her blanket tighter and closed her eyes, listening to her own heartbeat. The city stretched endlessly around her, full of people yet empty of love, and somewhere inside that vast loneliness, a small girl kept breathing, kept walking, kept believing that maybe kindness still existed, even if the world had forgotten how to show it. She lifted her face to the sky and whispered, "Mom, if you're watching, I'm still trying." A tear slipped down her cheek, blending with the rain. No one saw. But in that moment, under the humming streetlight and the endless drizzle, the city that forgot her felt, for just a second, like it might remember. The rain hadn't stopped. It fell heavier now, washing the city in a dull gray glow. Each droplet sounded like a heartbeat against the cracked pavement, slow, persistent, and lonely. Lena walked with her head down, the old blanket clinging to her shoulders like wet paper. She wasn't sure where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. A sudden sound made her freeze, a low, broken whine, not human. She turned toward the noise, heart pounding. Behind a rusted dumpster half buried in shadows, something shifted. The smell of blood and wet fur hit her all at once. Her breath caught. There, lying on its side, was a German shepherd, large, muscular, but trembling with pain. Its coat was soaked through, matted with dirt and blood. One of its front legs twisted at an unnatural angle. A cracked metal collar hung loosely around its neck, the engraved tags smeared and half broken. She could still make out the faint letters. K9 Unit, Metro Police. Lena's eyes widened. A police dog. She looked around. No officer, no one calling its name. Just the sound of rain and the creature's labored breathing. For a moment she hesitated. A police dog could bite, could hurt her if she got too close. But then, it looked at her. Those eyes, deep, amber, and full of exhaustion, met hers, and all her fear dissolved. It wasn't anger she saw there. It was confusion, pain, and something else. A quiet plea. Lena knelt slowly, her knees splashing into a puddle. "Hey," she whispered, her voice trembling as if she were talking to a wounded friend. "Timtion param hermams." "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog growled weakly, then whimpered, its head falling back against the wet concrete. Lena's heart clenched. She'd seen pain before, in hungry kids, in old men sleeping under bridges. But this was different. This creature wasn't meant to be alone. It had once belonged somewhere, to someone. Without thinking, she pulled the scarf from her neck, the only real piece of color she owned, a faded red with frayed edges, and tore it into strips. The fabric ripped unevenly, her fingers shaking. I know. Just hold on," she murmured. She pressed one hand against the wound on the dog's leg. Warm blood seeped through her fingers. The dog flinched but didn't pull away. "It's okay," she whispered again, voice barely audible over the storm. "You'll be okay." She wrapped the scarf tight, her small hands working clumsily but carefully, the way she used to when she helped her mom bandage scraped knees long ago. The makeshift bandage turned dark with blood, but it slowed the flow. When she was done, she sat back, breathing hard. Her fingers were numb, her knees soaked, but she didn't move. She just looked at him, the once proud animal lying broken beside a dumpster. Her stomach growled again. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the half loaf of bread she'd been saving. It was damp now, the paper wrapping soggy. She stared at it for a long second, then smiled sadly. "Guess you need it more than I do." She broke the bread in half. The larger piece she held out toward the dog, her hand trembling in the cold. "Here," she said softly. "It's not much, but it's all I have." The dog sniffed the air. For a moment it didn't move. Then, slowly, it lifted its head, sniffed again, and with a weak motion, took the bread from her hand. Its teeth brushed her fingers, gentle, deliberate. Lena's heart skipped. She smiled, a small, fragile thing, glowing faintly in the dark. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're still fighting. That's good." They sat there together, girl and dog, two forgotten souls huddled in the corner of a city that didn't care. The rain softened for a while, turning to a mist. The streetlight above flickered, bathing them in uneven light. Lena reached out slowly, placing her hand on the dog's head. Its fur was cold, rough under her palm, but alive. The dog's eyes closed, breathing slowing as if her touch brought peace. No words were spoken, just breath and warmth and silence, the kind that speaks louder than anything else. Then, from far away, came the sound of sirens. They rose through the night, sharp and echoing, bouncing between buildings. The dog's ears twitched, its body stiffened. A faint growl rumbled in its chest, then turned into a whimper. "Shh," Lena whispered, stroking its fur. "Don't move. You're hurt." But the dog tried to rise anyway, pushing against the ground with its good legs. Its collar jingled faintly, the metal clinking like a cry for help. It managed to stand for a moment, trembling. Then its legs gave out, and it collapsed with a pained yelp. Lena gasped and caught its head before it hit the pavement. "Hey, hey, don't do that," she said, panic in her voice now. "You're not ready." The sirens grew louder, closer. Maybe the police were coming for him. Maybe they'd help, or maybe they'd never know he was here. Lena didn't know what to do. She looked down at her scarf, soaked with blood, and at her hands, trembling but steady. "You'll be okay," she said again, more to herself than to him. "You have to be." The dog blinked slowly, as if trying to memorize her face. For a moment it looked peaceful, almost grateful. Lena leaned closer, her voice soft as a breath. "My name's Lena," she whispered. "Don't forget it, okay?" The dog's tail twitched once, weak but unmistakable. She smiled through her tears. Then the lights from a distant patrol car cut through the rain, flashing red and blue across the alley walls. Lena stepped back. If they found her here, they might take her away again, to another shelter, another cold bed. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I have to go." She brushed her hand one last time along his head. His fur was wet, his eyes half closed, but he turned slightly toward her touch. And then she was gone, slipping into the maze of alleys, her small figure vanishing into the fog. Behind her, the German shepherd lay still, the faint smell of bread lingering in the air. The rain fell again, washing away the blood, the footprints, and the only moment of kindness that night had seen. In the distance, the sirens wailed, too late, and the city, for a brief heartbeat, seemed to pause, as if it had witnessed something it didn't deserve. A girl with nothing, who gave everything. 7 years later, the same city pulsed beneath a pale dawn, busier now, louder, harder. The streets no longer whispered loneliness. They screamed it between sirens and traffic lights. Yet, on the training field behind the police headquarters, there was something still, almost sacred, about the way a single German shepherd stood waiting for command. His name was Rex, and in this city of chaos, he was precision carved from loyalty. The morning mist hung low, drifting around the obstacles, ramps, tunnels, scent barrels, and brick walls, while Officer Mark Evans, his handler, adjusted the strap on his vest. "Ready, boy?" he asked, his voice steady but warm. Rex tilted his head, alert eyes fixed on Mark's hand. His tail swayed once. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. They understood each other without words. "Go!" The command snapped through the air, and Rex exploded into motion, a blur of black and tan muscles. He bounded over hurdles, leapt through the wooden ring, hit the ground running, and dove straight into a tunnel barely wide enough for him. The officers watching from the sidelines couldn't help but cheer quietly. "He's a machine," one said. "Best dog we've had in years." Mark smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. But deep down he knew Rex wasn't just a machine. There was something else behind those eyes, something almost human. The whistle blew. Rex froze instantly, panting, his chest rising and falling in sharp rhythm. Mark crouched beside him, giving a gentle pat. "Good boy. That's my partner." Rex's ears flicked, catching sounds Mark couldn't. The soft crunch of boots on gravel, the click of a holster. His nose twitched, filtering scents from the breeze. Diesel, coffee, gun oil, bread. Bread. Rex paused. The smell was faint. Someone from the cafeteria, maybe. But his body stiffened. For a moment his eyes went distant, the world blurring around him. Somewhere deep inside that animal memory, a fragment of rain and warmth flickered. a small hand offering half a loaf, a trembling voice saying, "You'll be okay." "Rex, you good?" Mark asked, noticing the sudden stillness. The dog blinked once, twice, then shook his head and refocused. Back to work. But the hesitation hadn't gone unnoticed. Mark frowned slightly. "That's the second time this week," he muttered. Later that morning, the team gathered for a routine demonstration. Crowd control, obedience drills, and tracking exercises. The courtyard buzzed with energy as visitors and new recruits lined the fences to watch. Mark stood beside Rex, his gloved hand resting on the harness strap. "All right, team," the captain called out. "We'll start with the K9 track and retrieval. Rex, you're up." Mark nodded. "You heard him, partner." Rex barked once, sharp and focused. A volunteer jogged off, carrying a scent cloth, disappearing into the maze of parked vehicles. The moment he was out of sight, Mark lowered his hand. "Find him." Rex's nose dropped to the ground. Instinct kicked in. The rhythm of breath, scent, pursuit. He moved like a ghost through the cars, precise and relentless. Within minutes, he located the man crouched behind a crate and barked twice. Success signal. Applause broke out from the recruits. Someone laughed. "That's one scary nose." Rex returned to Mark's side, tail wagging. For a moment, the world seemed right again. All muscle, instinct, and duty. But as one of the recruits approached, chatting with another, he mentioned a name casually. "Hey, grab that file from Lena's desk, will you?" Rex froze mid-step. His ears flattened slightly, his eyes unfocused. Mark felt the tension on the leash. "Rex?" The dog stood still, utterly still. The noise around them faded in his mind, replaced by something soft, distant. Lena. He remembered rain, the smell of blood and bread, a child's voice whispering his name into the storm before vanishing. He remembered trying to stand, falling, the world spinning, and then darkness. The recruits laughed again, unaware. "Guess the name scared him," one joked. But Mark wasn't laughing. He knelt, running his hand gently along Rex's fur until his fingers brushed the scar at his neck. A faint white line curved just beneath the collar. It caught the morning light like a quiet reminder. "Where'd you get that, huh?" Mark murmured softly. He'd always wondered. The record said Rex had been found injured near a warehouse years ago, rescued, retrained, and reassigned. They never said how he survived, only that he refused to leave the ambulance that brought him in, like he'd been waiting for someone who never came. Mark smiled faintly. "Whoever saved you must have been something special." Rex tilted his head, watching Mark with calm eyes. If only he could speak. That afternoon, during patrol, Mark and Rex rode together through the city streets. The patrol car hummed softly, wipers brushing away drizzle. Mark kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on Rex's head. "You know, sometimes I think you understand more than you let on," he said. Rex sat quietly, gaze fixed outside. The city had changed, new stores, new people, but some corners still smelled the same. Rust, wet asphalt, cheap perfume, and somewhere deep in the maze of alleys, the faint trace of something long buried in memory. Smoke, rain, bread, and a child's voice. His ears twitched. "Rex?" Mark glanced over. The dog had lifted his head suddenly, nose pressed against the window. "You smell something?" A woman selling bread from a small cart crossed the street, steam rising from fresh loaves. Rex stared, unblinking. Mark chuckled. "What's the matter? You hungry too?" But Rex wasn't thinking of food. He was thinking of warmth. of a soft hand brushing his fur, of the words, "Don't forget my name." A car horn blared. The moment passed. Rex turned back toward the road, quiet again. That night, in the K9 quarters, the building settled into silence. The other dogs slept soundly, but Rex lay awake, eyes half open, ears twitching at every sound. The moonlight fell across the floor, illuminating the scar on his neck, the same scar that never faded, no matter how many years passed. Sometimes, in dreams, he saw her. The little girl with sad eyes and a broken scarf. He remembered her laughter through the rain, the taste of bread on his tongue, and the warmth of her hand. Every time he woke, the ache remained. Something missing, something unfinished. He didn't know her name anymore. Not really. But every time he smelled bread, or heard that soft syllable, Lena, his heart remembered, even if his mind could not. And somewhere beyond the walls of the precinct, in the same city that raised and forgot them both, she was still out there, breathing, surviving, waiting for fate to call their names again. The city hadn't changed much. Only the faces had. Neon still blinked through the fog. Trains still howled through the night. And somewhere beneath the tracks, hidden behind old warehouses and forgotten fences, a small shack leaned against the edge of the world. Inside, Lena, now 17, sat by a cracked window. Her hair was longer, tied messily with a piece of twine. Her hands were rough from work, red from detergent, lined with tiny cuts from broken glass. The girl who once wandered the streets had learned how to survive, but survival had its price. She had forgotten what it felt like to belong. The room was barely a room, more like a box patched together from wood and corrugated tin. The roof leaked when it rained. The floor creaked when she breathed. Yet to Lena, it was hers. A shelter no one could take away. A single light bulb swung overhead, buzzing faintly. She sat on her small bed, really just a pile of blankets, and counted the coins in her pocket. Enough for bread and maybe some soup tomorrow. Not enough for warmth. Never enough for peace. Her jacket hung over a nail on the wall, beside a faded scrap of red cloth. The edges were torn, stained with old brown spots, the fragment of her scarf from that night, 7 years ago. She had kept it through everything. The hunger, the shelters, the endless nights alone. It was the one thing she could never throw away. Sometimes she wondered why. Sometimes she told herself it was just habit. But deep down she knew it was hope. By day, Lena worked where she could. At the Silver Star Motel, she cleaned rooms after guests checked out, picking up cigarette butts, changing sheets, pretending not to notice the fights that happened behind locked doors. In the evenings, she washed dishes at a small diner downtown. The manager, an older woman named Ruth, didn't ask questions. She just handed Lena an apron and said, "Keep the sink empty and your head down." And Lena did. She learned to disappear into the rhythm of water and soap. She liked the sound of plates clinking, steady, predictable. She liked the heat of the kitchen. It was the only place that didn't feel cold. Sometimes customers dropped spare change in the tip jar, and Ruth would quietly slide a few coins into Lena's hand. "For you," she'd say, pretending not to care. But Lena always smiled softly. "Thank you, ma'am." Still, when her shift ended, she walked home alone. Always alone. Tonight, she finished late. The streets were nearly empty. A thin mist curled along the pavement, glowing under the streetlights. She crossed the bridge toward the railway yard, the sound of her boots echoing hollowly. A police siren wailed somewhere far off, one of hundreds she'd heard over the years. She stopped, listening. The sound faded into the distance, swallowed by the night. "I wonder if you made it," she whispered. Her voice was small but steady, like a memory learning how to breathe again. She didn't know why she said it out loud. Maybe because she'd been thinking about him more lately. The dog. The one with kind eyes and a broken collar. She still remembered how heavy his head felt against her hands, how warm his fur had been despite the rain. Sometimes she imagined he had survived, healed, found a home, maybe even gone back to his police unit. Sometimes, in her dreams, she saw him running through the city again, strong and proud, no longer the bleeding creature by the dumpster. In those dreams, he always looked back once before vanishing into light. She reached her shack, pushed the door open, and lit the small oil lamp by her bed. Shadows danced across the walls, soft and trembling. The red cloth fragment fluttered slightly in the draft. Lena sat down, pulling her knees close to her chest. The night pressed in around her, the rumble of passing trains shaking the thin walls. She stared at the piece of scarf for a long time. Her fingers brushed against it. "You remember him, don't you?" she said quietly, half smiling. "You were there." She laughed softly at herself. "Talking to a piece of cloth. What's next, Lena?" But the laugh faded quickly. The silence was heavier tonight, the kind that made her chest ache. She lay down, the lamp flickering beside her, and watched the ceiling drip. Outside, the city breathed. Engines, rain, sirens, lives. Somewhere out there, people were going home. Somewhere out there, someone might even be missing her. The thought was almost comforting. Almost. In the distance, the sound of barking broke the quiet. Strong, sharp, disciplined. She sat up. Through the crack in her window, she saw lights flashing blue and red near the railway yard. Police. K9 unit, maybe. She could just barely make out the silhouette of a dog. Large, alert, moving with purpose beside an officer. Her heart stopped for a moment. It was too far to see clearly. The light bent in the fog. But something in the way it walked, the way it paused to sniff the air, then turned its head as if listening, stirred something deep in her chest. She pressed her palm against the window. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." The officer called something she couldn't hear. The dog barked twice, tail low, stance steady. Then they turned and disappeared into the maze of warehouses. Lena sat frozen, tears threatening to fall. She wanted to run outside, to chase them, to call out. But fear held her still. The world had taken enough from her. She wasn't ready to believe it could give something back. She sat there for a long time after the lights were gone, the echo of the siren still hanging in the air, like a fading heartbeat. When she finally lay down again, she pulled the red cloth close to her face and whispered into it, as if speaking to someone who might hear her through time itself. "If you're still out there, thank you for making me believe people, no, hearts, can survive anything." The rain returned, soft and steady, tapping against the roof. The trains wailed in the distance, and across the same city, in a warm K9 kennel not far away, Rex stirred in his sleep. His ears twitched, his body shifted restlessly. He saw flashes, rain, bread, and a girl's trembling smile. For the briefest moment, his tail thumped once against the floor, as if answering a call he couldn't yet understand. They were close, so close. Two souls still bound by the quiet promise made on a forgotten night. The night started like any other. Quiet, predictable. The kind of silence that only cities can fake. Heavy, waiting, humming beneath the surface. Officer Mark Evans sat in his patrol car, sipping stale coffee while Rex rested in the back seat, eyes half closed, but always alert. It was 1:42 a.m. when the radio cracked to life. All units respond to structure fire. Industrial sector near East Rail. Possible spread to residential area. Multiple calls confirmed. Mark straightened immediately. Copy that. Unit 27 en route. Before the dispatcher even finished, Rex was up. Ears pricked, body tense. That sixth sense of his igniting like a spark in dry grass. Mark glanced in the rearview mirror. You feel it too, huh? Rex's low growl was his answer. They sped through the sleeping streets, red and blue lights slicing through fog and smoke that was already thickening the air. As they neared the scene, a dark orange glow bled across the horizon. The smell hit next, bitter, choking, unmistakable. The fire was no accident. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. Flames devoured the old warehouse, a 2-story structure near the railway. Firefighters shouted orders through the noise, their suits glinting in the inferno's light. Windows shattered under the heat. Sparks flew like angry stars into the night sky. Mark parked beside the fire truck, jumping out as Rex barked sharply from inside the car. Hold on, buddy, he muttered, pulling open the back door. You're with me. Rex leapt down, paws splashing into water and ash. His nose lifted immediately, sniffing through the smoke, mapping the chaos with every breath. Mark clipped the leash onto his harness. We've got a perimeter check. Let's move. They began circling the area, checking for movement, any sign of trapped workers or residents nearby. The firefighters were focused on the warehouse itself, but the heat radiated so intensely it felt like standing too close to the sun. Rex led the way, tail low but steady, scanning, analyzing, ready. He was built for this, trained for search and rescue, explosives, tracking. But tonight, something was off. His steps grew hesitant, his ears swiveling toward something beyond the roar of the fire. Easy, Mark said softly. Stay with me. But Rex wasn't listening. His head snapped sharply to the left, toward a narrow street branching off from the main Lutta. Beyond the smoke, a smaller house flickered in the distance. Mark squinted. The warehouse cast enough light to see the outlines. A run-down home, half hidden by chain-link fence. And yes, flames licking at its roof. Dispatch, he called into his radio. I've got secondary ignition on a nearby residence. Requesting additional unit. Static. No answer. Great, he muttered. Signals fried. Rex barked once, sharp, urgent. Then again. He pulled at the leash, muscles straining, claws scraping against the wet ground. Whoa, whoa! Mark tightened his grip. Rex, what's gotten into you? The dog growled low, then whined. A desperate sound Mark had never heard before. He wasn't reacting to the warehouse fire. His eyes were locked on the small house beyond it. Smoke rolled across the lot like waves, blinding, suffocating. Mark covered his mouth with his sleeve. There's no report of civilians there, he said out loud, mostly to himself. We stick to protocol. But Rex didn't care. He lunged forward, barking fiercely, tugging against the leash so hard Mark stumbled a step. Rex! The leash pulled taut. For a heartbeat, handler and dog stood in opposition. Man bound by rules, beast bound by instinct. Mark felt it in his chest. That uneasy tremor. The sense that something was wrong. He'd learned to trust Rex's intuition more than his own reason, more than once. That dog had found things no human could. Saved lives no one expected to find. But this was different. Rex wasn't just alert. He was possessed. Rex, heel! Mark commanded. The dog didn't obey. He barked again. Not the sharp signal of duty, but something rawer. A cry. Behind them, a firefighter shouted, "Evans, get your K9 clear! That warehouse is about to blow!" Mark turned for a second, just a second, and Rex yanked free. The leash slipped from his hand. "Rex, no!" The German shepherd bolted through the smoke, disappearing into the black haze toward the smaller burning house. "Damn it!" Mark ran after him, coughing as the air turned thick. Flames danced along the fence line, lighting the world in orange chaos. The roar of the main warehouse behind him grew louder. Metal collapsing, glass shattering. Every instinct told him to turn back. Every rule demanded it. But that was his partner, his friend. "Rex!" he yelled again, voice breaking through the noise. Somewhere ahead, through the smoke, came a bark, muffled, frantic, fading. Mark froze at the edge of the side street, torn between two fires, the one burning before him and the one eating at his heart. If he followed Rex, he'd be disobeying direct orders, risking his life for a hunch. But if he didn't, and someone was in there, he clenched his fists, ash coating his gloves. "God help me," he muttered, and took a step toward the smaller blaze. The heat hit him instantly. Sparks clung to his vest like glowing dust. Somewhere nearby, a wooden beam collapsed with a scream of metal. He raised his arm to shield his face. Through the smoke, he saw the faint silhouette of the small house. Flames curling through broken windows, roof half caved in. Then he saw it. Movement, low to the ground. Rex. The dog was pawing at the door, barking furiously, as if trying to dig through the flames themselves. Mark's chest tightened. "Rex, get out of there!" But the shepherd wouldn't move. His body was turned toward the fire, his entire stance screaming one thing: someone's inside. Mark's radio crackled suddenly. "Evans, what the hell are you doing? Get back to perimeter! The warehouse is collapsing!" Mark didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Rex, on the desperate rhythm of the barking. A choice, duty or instinct. And for the first time in years, Mark realized they weren't always the same thing. He dropped the radio and ran forward. "Hold on, boy. I'm with you." The night roared. The fire screamed, and somewhere inside that burning house, destiny waited unseen, patient, ready to reunite two lost souls. Through smoke and fate, the air inside the house was thick enough to choke hope itself. Smoke poured through the broken windows like a living thing, curling, twisting, devouring everything it touched. Flames crept along the walls, crawling up curtains, licking the ceiling beams until the wood groaned in protest. And Lena was still inside. She lay half buried under a fallen beam, her leg pinned by splintered wood and shattered glass. Every breath came with fire. The smoke clawed at her lungs, turning each gasp into a knife. She tried to move, couldn't. Her body trembled, muscles screaming in exhaustion. The heat pressed down, unbearable, suffocating. Her throat was dry, voice nearly gone. But still, she whispered, "Please, someone." No answer. Only the crackling of the fire, like cruel laughter. Her eyes darted toward the door, the one she'd been too slow to reach when the roof collapsed. The world was dim now, red and black. Shadows moved in the haze, but none of them were human. Tears mixed with soot on her cheeks. She coughed violently, clutching at her chest. "Please," she rasped again, barely audible over the roar. "I don't want to die here." Somewhere above, the roof gave another warning groan. Dust rained down. She pressed her face into her sleeve, coughing until her whole body shook. The room blurred in and out of focus. Her mind began to drift past the smoke, past the pain, back to another night long ago. Rain. Cold. The smell of wet fur. A wounded dog by a dumpster. Bleeding. Trembling. Her small hands tying a scarf around its leg. A voice. Her voice. Whispering, "You'll be okay." She had saved him then. Or tried to. And now, 7 years later, fate had come full circle. Only this time, she was the one waiting in the dark. Her eyes fluttered shut, the edges of her vision dissolved into orange light. She thought she heard something, faint, but real. Barking. At first, she thought she was imagining it. The sound cut through the chaos, strong, sharp, desperate. It grew louder, closer. Then came the crash of wood splintering, the heavy thud of paws. Through the smoke, a shape burst into the room, large, dark, alive. A German shepherd. Lena's eyes widened, tears instantly blurring her vision. She blinked, coughing again. The dog stood in the firelight, chest heaving, ears flattened against the roar. For a moment, time stopped. The world shrank to just the two of them. A dying girl and a determined animal staring through the flames at each other. The dog barked once, loud enough to shake the air. Then he lunged forward, nose to the ground, finding her through instinct and memory. Hey boy," she choked out. Her voice cracked. "It's okay. I'm here." Rex's body moved like muscle and will combined. He reached her side, his teeth gripping her sleeve gently but firmly. He pulled. The first tug didn't move her. The beam was too heavy. He growled, set his feet, and tried again. Lena screamed as the wood shifted. Pain shot through her leg, but it was a scream of life. Rex didn't stop. He pulled inch by inch, clawing backward, the floor beneath him burning hot enough to blister his paws. His fur smoked, his eyes stung, but he refused to release her sleeve. Outside, muffled voices. Firefighters shouting orders, boots pounding. But inside, only two beings fought the fire. One with strength, the other with faith. Lena's hand reached out, trembling, brushing against his shoulder. "It's you," she whispered hoarsely. "It's really you." The scar on his neck caught the light. Pale mark curved like a crescent moon. Her breath hitched. The same scar. The same eyes. Memories crashed through her like oxygen. The night she found him bleeding. The scarf. The bread. The promise. Tears streamed down her soot-covered face. "Rex," she whispered, "you made it." He pulled harder, responding not to the word, but to the voice, the same voice that had once saved him. The door gave way under the weight of the fire, collapsing inward. The flames lunged forward, licking the air. The heat became unbearable. "Come on, boy," she gasped. "We can do it." One last tug. The beam shifted. She cried out as her legs slid free. Rex moved fast, clamping his teeth higher on her sleeve and dragging her backward through the smoke, step by step. She tried to crawl, helping as much as she could. The world spun. Her vision dimmed again. "Don't stop," she whispered, voice breaking. "Please, don't stop." He didn't. He couldn't. Outside, the firefighters reached the front of the house just as Rex's silhouette appeared in the doorway, dragging something behind him. "Dog coming out! We've got movement!" someone shouted. Mark Evans sprinted toward the door, covering his face with his arm. "Rex, here, boy! Come on!" But Rex ignored him. His focus was unshakable. His jaws locked on Lena's sleeve until he had pulled her clear from the collapsing structure. He backed up, step by step, until they were both on wet ground, the cold rain hissing against burning embers. The roof gave its final groan, then collapsed completely, sending a wave of sparks into the night sky. The firefighters dove for cover as a blast of heat rolled through the street. When the smoke began to clear, Mark saw them. Rex crouched protectively over the girl, his fur scorched, his sides heaving. He refused to move. Even as medics rushed in, even as water hoses thundered over the ruins, he stayed there, pressing his body against hers, guarding her from a danger that was already gone. Mark ran forward, dropping to his knees beside them. "Rex, you stubborn miracle!" He reached out, running his hand along the dog's neck, feeling the tremble in every breath. Rex lifted his head weakly, eyes meeting Mark's for a heartbeat, then turned back to Lena, whining softly. The medics were shouting now. "We've got a live one! Get a stretcher!" Lena stirred faintly, coughing. Her eyelids fluttered open. She looked up, dazed, and the first thing she saw was his face. Wet fur, singed ears, those same amber eyes staring down at her. "Hey, you found me," she whispered, tears streaking through soot. Rex pressed his nose gently against her cheek, a small whine escaping his throat. He didn't need words. And in that instant, under the rain, beneath the sirens, surrounded by the ruins of fire and fate, two stories finally collided again. The girl who once saved a dying dog, and the dog who came back through fire to return the favor. As the medics lifted her onto the stretcher, Rex tried to follow, refusing to be pulled away. Mark gripped his harness firmly. "Easy, boy. She's safe now." But Rex didn't believe in safety. Not until he could see her breathe again. His eyes stayed locked on her as they loaded her into the ambulance. The door closed. The lights flared red against the wet street, and she was gone. Only then did Rex sit down, trembling, head low, steam rising from his soaked fur. Mark knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his neck. "You did it, partner," he said quietly. "You found her." Rex's gaze lingered on the departing ambulance, steady, unblinking, as if somewhere deep inside, beyond reason, beyond memory, he already knew who she was. And the city, for one brief moment, seemed to hold its breath, watching as rain washed away the last embers of a story 7 years in the making. The world came back to Lena in fragments. The soft hiss of oxygen, the distant beeping of a monitor, the antiseptic smell that clung to every breath. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy and reluctant. White light flooded her vision, sharp and unreal. For a long moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Then pain reminded her otherwise. A dull ache in her ribs, the sting of burns along her arm. She tried to move, but her body refused. Bandages wrapped her like fragile armor. A low groan escaped her lips. "Easy," a voice said nearby, gentle, firm. "You're safe now." She turned her head slowly. A nurse was adjusting the IV drip beside her bed, smiling faintly. "You've been out for 2 days," the woman said softly. "You're lucky to be alive. The firefighters found you just in time." Lena blinked, her mind hazy. Firefighters, the fire, the heat, the dog. Her pulse quickened. "The dog," she whispered, voice rasping through dry lips. "Is he?" The nurse hesitated, then smiled again. "He's fine. Burned his paws a bit, but he's one tough hero." She nodded toward the door. "They're waiting outside. Want me to let them in?" Lena's heart caught in her throat. She nodded, unable to speak. The door opened with a faint click. Officer Mark Evans stepped inside, still in uniform, hat in hand. His expression was soft, but tired. the kind of weariness that comes from sleepless nights spent between duty and worry. Behind him, walking carefully on bandaged paws, came Rex. The moment Lena saw him, the air left her chest. He looked magnificent even in recovery, strong, proud, his fur freshly cleaned, but still rough from the fire. A small patch on his leg was shaved for treatment, and his left ear had a fresh nick. But his eyes were the same. Warm, alert, familiar. The room fell away. The nurse slipped quietly out. The other officers paused by the doorway, their chatter fading into silence. Rex's nails clicked softly against the tile as he approached the bed. Each step deliberate, cautious, almost reverent. When he reached her side, he stopped, tilting his head, as if unsure. Lena's trembling hand rose slowly, stopping halfway, uncertain if the moment was real. "Hey," she whispered. "It's okay. You can come closer." Rex's tail moved once, hesitantly, then again, stronger. He took the last step forward and pressed his muzzle gently against her palm. The warmth of his fur broke her. Tears welled up instantly, spilling down her cheeks. She brushed her fingers along his face, feeling the contours she remembered, the bridge of his nose, the curve of his jaw. And then she saw it. The scar. A faint, pale crescent just below his collar, almost hidden under the fur. Her breath hitched. "No," she whispered, voice cracking. "It can't be." But it was. She knew that mark like she knew her own heartbeat. "You remember me, don't you?" she whispered, voice shaking with disbelief and wonder. Rex lifted his head slightly, eyes fixed on hers. Then, with a low whine, he pressed his forehead gently against her hand, the same way he had done years ago, when she first touched him in the rain. The sound he made wasn't a bark. It wasn't a cry. It was something deeper, a recognition that went beyond words. Mark stood by the foot of the bed, frozen. He'd seen soldiers cry, criminals confess, men break under guilt, but never anything like this. Something sacred was happening, and even he knew enough to stay silent. The other officers shifted uneasily, eyes glistening. One of them whispered, "That's her? The one from the fire?" Mark nodded slowly. "Seems so." He stepped closer. "Lena," he said softly, "we didn't know you two had history." She didn't look away from Rex. Her fingers traced the scar again, voice trembling. "I found him years ago. He was hurt. I thought he wouldn't make it. I gave him my scarf, half my bread. And then I left. I didn't think I'd ever see him again." Mark's throat tightened. He looked at the dog, at the scar, then back at the girl in the bed. 7 years, he murmured. "He's been with us all this time." The department found him half dead near an alley, healed him, trained him, made him part of the K9 unit. Lena smiled through her tears. "He saved me. Again." Rex let out a small, contented sound, resting his head on the edge of the bed, eyes half closed. Mark exhaled slowly, removing his hat completely now. "You know," he said quietly, "I've been his handler for 5 years. I've seen him track suspects through gunfire, rescue victims under rubble, but I've never seen him break orders. Until that night." His gaze softened. "He must have known it was you." Silence filled the room again. Not empty, but heavy with emotion. Lena reached down, her hand trembling as she touched Rex's muzzle. You came back for me, she whispered. After all this time. Rex's eyes glistened in the morning light. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath syncing with hers. For a moment, no one moved. The beeping of the heart monitor faded into the background. Outside, the city was waking up. Sirens, horns, footsteps. But inside that small hospital room, the world stood still. One girl, one dog, bound by the kind of love that doesn't need words, the kind that time, distance, or even death can't erase. The captain entered quietly, stopping at the doorway. "Evans," he said, voice low, "you and your partner, you did good work." Mark nodded, still watching the reunion unfold. "He did all of it, sir." The captain's gaze softened on Lena. "We'll make sure you're taken care of. You have friends now, kid." Lena smiled weakly. "Thank you, sir." But her eyes never left Rex. She leaned closer, whispering through tears, "You kept your promise. You didn't forget." Rex lifted his head and pressed it gently against her chest. Mark turned away, blinking hard. Around him, even the toughest officers said nothing, their silence louder than any applause. And as the morning sunlight spilled through the blinds painting the room in soft gold, Lena finally smiled, the kind of smile that breaks and heals at the same time. Because after all the loss, all the waiting, all the darkness, she was no longer alone. The girl who once gave everything now had it returned, tenfold, by the one soul who'd never forgotten her kindness. The hospital room felt softer that evening, as if even the air had learned to whisper. The rain outside had stopped, and sunlight spilled gently through the half-drawn blinds, painting thin gold lines across the white sheets. Lena sat propped against the pillows, her bandages clean, her color returning. Beside her bed, Rex lay curled up, his head resting against the rail, one paw extended, just close enough to touch her hand. It had been hours since their reunion, but neither had really moved. They didn't need to. Sometimes, love didn't require motion. It just needed presence. Officer Mark Evans returned quietly, a paper cup of coffee in his hand, the faint lines of exhaustion softened by a small smile. He looked at the two of them and shook his head. "You know," he said softly, "I've seen miracles in my line of work, but this one tops the list." Lena looked up, her voice still weak but steady. "It doesn't feel real," she murmured. "I keep thinking I'll wake up, and it'll all be gone." Mark pulled a chair closer. "Why don't you tell me how it started? I've been trying to piece together what happened for 7 years. Maybe now I'll finally get the full story." Lena hesitated, eyes falling to Rex. He had drifted into a light sleep, his chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. She reached out and brushed her fingers along his fur, the movement tender, almost reverent. "It was a long time ago," she said quietly. "I was 10, alone, cold." Mark leaned forward, his expression softening. "I'd been on the street for months," Lena continued. "There was a storm that night. I remember hiding under an awning, holding onto my blanket like it could save me. I had half a loaf of bread, my last one." Her eyes glassed over, the memories playing behind them like old film. "That's when I saw him." Rex stirred slightly, as if hearing his name in her heart. "He was lying beside a dumpster, bleeding. I thought he was dead at first, but then he moved, and I saw his eyes. She smiled faintly. I'd never seen eyes like that. Tired, but kind. Like he was apologizing for being hurt. She took a deep breath. I was scared. He was big. Bigger than me. But something about him. I don't know, I couldn't just walk away. So I tore my scarf and wrapped his leg. And then I gave him my bread. Her voice wavered. It was all I had. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the monitor. Mark's eyes softened, his hand unconsciously tightening around the coffee cup. He took it so gently, she whispered, like he understood what it meant. And for a moment, I wasn't alone anymore. Then the sirens came, and I got scared. I told him my name, and I left. Her words hung in the air, fragile, heavy with memory. Mark sat back, stunned. He looked at Rex again, at the faint scar under his collar, the curve of it glowing faintly in the late afternoon light. So it was you, he said quietly. You're the reason he made it through that night. Lena frowned softly. What do you mean? After that night, Mark said, they found him near the old warehouse district, barely alive, broken leg, infection, starvation. Most dogs wouldn't have survived, but he did. The vet said someone had tried to help him, wrapped his wound with cloth. They found traces of blood on a piece of red fabric. He paused, smiling faintly. We kept it all these years, in his record file. Lena's eyes filled again, tears welling up, but this time not from pain. You still have it? Mark nodded. Yeah, you'll get it back. Rex stirred again, as if hearing the conversation, his ears flicking once before settling. Mark leaned forward. You know, we trained a lot of dogs over the years. But Rex, he was different, smarter, more loyal. He always had this look, like he was searching for someone. I never knew who. Time 500 pims. Now I do. Lena laughed softly through her tears. Guess he was just keeping his promise. Mark smiled. Guess so. The door opened quietly, and Captain Harris stepped in. A tall man, with silver in his hair and kindness in his eyes. He removed his cap, his tone gentle. Mind if I come in? Of course not, Mark said, standing. The captain looked at Lena with a mixture of respect and sympathy. You've been through a lot, young lady. I heard the whole story from Evans here. Lena smiled weakly. It's a lot to take in. The captain nodded, his gaze flicking toward Rex. That dog saved more lives than I can count, but it sounds like someone saved his first. Lena lowered her eyes. I just couldn't walk away. He smiled. That's how heroes start. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder. We've arranged some things for you. There's a place for you to stay, safe, warm, close to the K9 unit. You'll have people looking out for you from now on. Lena's lips trembled. I don't know what to say. Just say yes, the captain replied kindly. You've earned it. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. The captain nodded once, placed a gentle hand on Rex's head, and left quietly. When the door closed, Lena sat back, overwhelmed. Mark stayed beside her, silent for a moment, then said softly, You know, sometimes I think we don't find the ones who need saving. They find us. She smiled through tears. Maybe that's true. Rex let out a quiet sigh, curling closer to the bed, His body relaxed completely, for the first time since the fire. His breathing deepened, the tension melting away, until only peace remained. Lena reached down, fingers brushing over his paw. "Rest, boy," she murmured. "You've done enough." Mark stood, placing his hat back on. "I'll check in on you both tomorrow." She nodded, her eyes never leaving Rex. As Mark left, the room grew quiet again. The sunlight dimmed into the amber glow of evening. Lena traced small circles on the dog's fur, humming softly, the same lullaby her mother used to sing when she was little. Rex's ear twitched. His tail thumped once against the floor, and a soft rumble of contentment vibrated in his chest. And for the first time in years, Lena felt something she hadn't dared to feel. Home. Outside, the hospital lights flickered on as dusk settled over the city. Through the window, rain began again. Gentle, forgiving, cleansing. Inside, the girl who had once given everything to save a stranger now had that same stranger lying beside her, not as a symbol of loss, but of survival. She leaned her head back against the pillow, eyes closing as a peaceful tear slid down her cheek. Rex shifted closer, pressing his nose against her hand, one last time, before drifting into sleep. Their breaths matched, slow, steady, unbroken. And somewhere in that quiet hospital room, beneath the hum of machines and the fading light of day, two hearts, one human, one canine, found rest at last. The seasons turned quietly. Winter's sharp breath softened into the tender warmth of spring. The city, that once frozen, unforgiving place, bloomed again with life. And in a wide-open field behind the police headquarters, the sound of barking and laughter filled the morning air. Lena stood at the edge of the K-9 training ground, her new uniform slightly too big, sleeves rolled at the wrists. The sun glimmered across the fresh dew on the grass. In her hand she held a leash, not yet attached to any dog, just a symbol. For now. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. "Ready, rookie?" Officer Mark Evans called out, teasing but proud. She smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "As ready as I'll ever be." From a short distance away, Rex barked once, as if echoing her confidence. He was healthier now, fur thick and glossy again, stance proud. The scars he carried were still there, but they had become part of his strength, not his pain. When Lena walked toward him, his tail started to move, slow at first, then faster, thumping against the ground like a heartbeat. "Hey, partner," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Guess we're both learning new tricks." Rex pressed his nose against her palm, a quiet rumble of recognition vibrating in his chest. The months that followed were a kind of healing she didn't know existed. Every morning Lena woke before sunrise, pulling on her uniform with a pride that never faded. She joined the other trainees for drills, obedience calls, scent tracking, rescue coordination. At first, she stumbled, commands mixing, timing off, but she never quit. Rex was always watching. Mark often stood back, arms crossed, quietly amused. "He listens to you better than he does to me," he'd joke. Lena would grin, scratching behind Rex's ears. Maybe he just remembers who gave him bread. That line always made Mark shake his head with a smile, but beneath the humor was something sacred. The recognition that this girl, once lost in the city's shadows, was becoming part of something larger than herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. One morning during scent drills, Lena stood on the field while Rex waited across from her, leash coiled loosely in her hands. Mark blew the whistle. "Search!" Rex shot forward like a blur, nose to the ground, weaving between obstacles. Lena watched his movements, precise, powerful, confident. When he found the hidden object, he turned immediately, bounding toward her with it clenched gently in his mouth. "Good boy," she laughed, dropping to her knees as he reached her. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. He barked happily, tail wagging so hard it kicked up dust. The other officers clapped, smiling at the sight. Mark leaned toward the captain and murmured, "You'd think they've been partners their whole lives." The captain smiled. "Maybe they have. Just took the world a while to catch up." In the following weeks, Lena's progress astonished everyone. She learned discipline, not as something forced, but as something earned through care. She learned to read the dogs, their moods, their instincts, their silent language. And most of all, she learned to trust again. One afternoon, she stayed after training, sitting with Rex under the oak tree near the field. The wind carried the smell of grass and distant rain. Rex lay beside her, head resting on her lap. "You know," she said quietly, stroking his fur, "I used to think life was something that just happened to you. You get hurt, you lose, you survive. That's it. But maybe it's more like this place." Rex's ears twitched. "You fall, you get up, you try again. And sometimes," she smiled softly, "you meet someone who reminds you why you're supposed to keep going." He huffed, as if agreeing, and rolled onto his side, paws stretching lazily. Lena laughed, a sound bright and pure, carrying across the empty field. Times 700. For the first time since childhood, it didn't sound like an echo of pain. It sounded free. Days became weeks, and weeks turned into months. By summer, Lena had completed her trainee certification. Her photo now hung on the wall inside the K-9 unit, a new recruit, eyes full of light. She still lived modestly, in a small room above the training center. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, safe, hers. Sometimes she helped care for the other dogs, bathing them, cleaning their kennels, whispering to them like she used to whisper to Rex years ago. "You're safe now." The other officers admired her quiet persistence. "She's got the same heart as her dog," one of them said, "loyal to the end." Mark couldn't disagree. He watched her from the sidelines, pride mixed with something deeper. The understanding that this story wasn't about rescue anymore. It was about redemption. On the last day of her training phase, the unit gathered for the final evaluation, an obstacle course meant to test every handler's bond with their K-9. Mark held the clipboard. "Evans and Rex, you're up." Lena shot him a playful glare. "Don't think you're giving me special treatment." He chuckled. "Wouldn't dream of it." Rex barked, eager, ready. "Okay, boy," Lena whispered, kneeling beside him. "Let's show them what we've got." When the whistle blew, they moved as one, through tunnels, over barriers, across scent tracks. Every command, every movement flowed in perfect rhythm. The audience fell silent, watching the unspoken language between them. By the time they crossed the finish line, Lena was out of breath but laughing, tears in her eyes. Rex trotted beside her, tongue hanging out, proud and unbothered. Mark walked up, clapping slowly. "You passed with flying colors," he said. Lena wiped her face, smiling wide. "I didn't do it alone." Rex barked once, as if to say, "Of course you didn't." The captain, standing nearby, nodded approvingly. Looks like we've got ourselves a future handler. As the sun began to set, the team dispersed, laughter fading into the golden evening. Lena stayed behind, sitting in the grass with Rex. The sky burned orange and violet. "You know," she said softly, watching the horizon, "I used to be afraid of tomorrow. Now, I can't wait for it." Rex lifted his head, his amber eyes reflecting the same light that once glowed in the fire. Unbroken, eternal. She leaned down, kissing the top of his head. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finding me again." Rex's tail brushed against her leg. Slow, steady, content. In that moment, with the world quiet, and the setting sun wrapping them in gold, Lena realized the pain of the past hadn't been a curse. It had been a path, leading her right here. And this time, she wasn't alone. The city glowed with soft morning light. A breeze carried spring blossoms through the courtyard of the Metropolitan Police Headquarters, where rows of officers stood in uniform. In the front row, a black and tan German shepherd sat proudly beside his handler. Around his neck hung a silver medallion, the Medal of Valor. The name engraved, Rex. Applause thundered across the courtyard, but the heart of the moment was quieter, in the space between a girl and her dog. Lena, now a police trainee, walked beside Rex with steady steps and shining eyes. She looked every bit the young woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. Most of the crowd didn't know her story. They saw headlines, "K9 hero saves civilian from fire," but the truth ran deeper. Captain Mark Evans watched with quiet pride as the chief spoke. "In every generation," he said, "there are acts of courage that remind us why we serve. Today, we honor a K9 who risked his life not only out of duty, but out of love, the bond between human and dog." When Lena's name was called, she knelt beside Rex, touching the medal. "You saved me twice," she whispered. "Once with hope, once with fire." Then she stood at the podium. Her voice trembled, then steadied. "Years ago, I was a lost kid, cold, hungry, alone. One night, I found a wounded dog in the rain. I gave him half a loaf of bread and a piece of my scarf, hoping it would help him survive. I never thought I'd see him again. But 7 years later, in another storm, he found me. Trapped, scared, ready to give up. And this time, he saved me." The crowd fell silent. Even the breeze paused. Lena's eyes found Rex again. "People talk about miracles," she said softly. "I think they're quiet things, like a heartbeat beside yours, when you think the world's ended. Kindness never disappears. It just finds its way back, sometimes in a different form." Tears glimmered in the eyes of hardened officers. "If this story means anything," Lena said, smiling through her tears, "it's that no act of kindness is ever wasted. What you give, love, hope, faith, always finds its way home." Applause erupted. Mark murmured, "That girl could teach this department what bravery really is." The captain nodded. "She already has." As photographers swarmed, Lena crouched beside Rex again, resting her hand on his medal. "This belongs to you," she whispered, "and maybe a little to the girl you once trusted." Rex huffed softly, his tail brushing the ground. Mark joined them. "Looks like the city's heroes come in pairs," he said. Lena smiled. "We just helped each other get home." When the ceremony ended, laughter and voices filled the courtyard, but Lena lingered. The sunset painted everything in gold. She unclipped Rex's leash, and together they walked toward the open gate. The applause faded behind them. "We did it," she whispered. Rex glanced up, eyes glowing amber in the fading light. She brushed her hand through his fur. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's go home." Side by side, they crossed the courtyard, bathed in the last warmth of day. Their shadows stretched long. One human, one dog, bound by a promise made in the rain and kept through fire. At the gate, the setting sun caught the metal on Rex's collar, making it shine like a small star, a symbol of everything they had endured and everything they had become. Some bonds never fade. They simply live on, in loyalty, in memory, in love that no time can erase. Sometimes, stories like this remind us why dogs aren't just pets. They're family. They see us at our lowest, stand by us in silence, and love us in ways words could never explain. German shepherds, especially, seem to carry a kind of quiet wisdom, brave hearts wrapped in fur, loyal beyond reason. If this story touched you, maybe it's because you've felt that bond too, the kind that doesn't need words to be understood. I've found that taking time to learn more about your dog, how they think and feel, can make that connection even deeper. There's a wonderful resource I often recommend. It's gentle, practical, and built for people who truly love their dogs. You can explore it when you're ready. It's not a pitch, just something that's helped many of us understand our companions a little better. At the end of the day, it's simple. Love them well, and they'll give you a lifetime of loyalty in return. That's the real story, and it's one we can all be part of.